7 years ago, I couldn't stand Assassin's Creed 3. Its recent remaster changed my mind. Upon its initial 2012 release, Assassin's Creed 3 was divisive, to say the least. Critically, it was well received. The Metacritic score sits at 84, with numerous publications calling it the best series entry to date. They praised its characters, setting, and wealth of open-world activities. If Metacritic were the sole indication of a game's worth, Assassin's Creed 3 would have a sparkling reputation. But the other group, one to which I've belonged since 2012, told a much more tarnished story of a game with technical issues and sloppy mechanics, a boring protagonist, and menial open-world quests. It was a messy conglomeration of action set pieces that never really meshed, and as the series continued its steady march, I consistently ranked it at the bottom of my personal list. But lo and behold, the credits have just rolled on my first replay in 7 years, and I'm eating my words. Here is a remaster that doesn't confirm my vision of the past, but upends it completely. Many of my original frustrations remain, yes, but the franchise is different today than it once was. It's bigger, more complicated, and my relation to it has evolved. As is often the result of time, context, and resounding personal improvement, my view of Assassin's Creed 3 has changed. Now, I can see it for what it is, a key turning point in one of the most pervasive franchises today. First off, let's talk about that intro. That 6-hour prologue that puts you in the shoes of the unadvertised Haytham Kenway. That opening chunk that illustrates just how similar the Templars really are to their assassin rivals. These few chapters humanize the villainous father figure in a way the Star Wars prequels only dreamt of doing. As you could probably tell, I adore this introduction. But in 2012, I did not. In fact, I resented it. I resented it for keeping me from playing Connor, this badass Mohawk assassin with his tomahawk skills and cover art stoicism. I wanted Haytham's chapter to end almost as soon as it began, despite the twist that I had been playing as a Templar all along. But I now see how essential that intro is. It reverberates throughout the entire game. As I finally step into Connor's shoes, join the Assassin Brotherhood, and become embroiled in the American Revolution, I have a clear target every step of the way. My Templar enemies aren't just names and faces, they're a guy I saved from the Redcoats, or one I rescued from torture only to help him exact revenge. I even met one in a Boston pub, drunkenly welcoming me to the new world. I may have done these things as Connor's father, but that's the point. Connor isn't the only conduit for player agency in the game, and it helps drive the story home. The Templars aren't just friends of Haytham's or enemies of Connor's, they're my friends, and they're my enemies. And this brings me to Connor himself, and if I'm honest, my opinion here has not changed. At times he's endearing, at times he's unbearably boring. I love the idea that he's stuck between worlds, unsure of where he belongs, pulled between his Mohawk tribe, the Assassin Brotherhood, and both sides of the revolution. But the pacing can be so slipshod and Connor's delivery so bland that much of it falls flat. I get that his confusion and uncertainty are meant to further drive home the moral grays of the Assassin-Templar conflict, but that doesn't excuse Connor's overall lack of spark. I can only point out 2 times when I was impressed by his delivery, and in both cases, he was consumed with anger. There's no range in his emotions, he's either at an 11 or a 1. This is also reflected in AC3's stilted character movement. Despite the remaster's upgraded textures, Ubisoft Barcelona was working with dated animations, and it shows. Faces don't convey the right emotion, or in some cases, any emotion at all, and Connor's feet can't help but magnetize toward nearby objects at the slightest touch. At his best, Connor is more a man of action than words, but when his actions don't line up with my intent, the cracks really start to show. AC3's 7-year-old skeleton notwithstanding, Connor remains one of the more tragic figures in a franchise rife with them. Throughout most of the story, he's told that he's a messenger and little more. Not to dive too deep into the zany modern-day storyline of the franchise, but basically, you play as Connor so the modern-day Desmond, reliving his ancestral memories, can find the key to stopping the end of the world. Much of Assassin's Creed 3 revolves around the potential for one person to make a difference when forces on every side are set against him. This conflict leads him to kill not just his father, but also his best friend. Connor may falter in his delivery, but Ubisoft's script places him in a conflicted, dramatic spot. If you anticipated Assassin's Creed 3 as eagerly as I did in 2012, you may have also worried about the musical direction. Of the numerous changes to staff and direction following the Ezio trilogy, one of the more notable departures was that of Jesper Kyd, the composer responsible for the musical identity of the first 4 games. He helped shape each atmosphere with his period piece ensembles. To lose him was a major blow to the franchise. But upon returning, I can't help but appreciate the confident quiet AC3 has. There are occasional orchestral touches as you explore the landscape, but they're subtle, restrained. The wind is muffled in the underground tunnels, and the frontier is pulled straight from a Robert Frost poem. I can't say whether the sparse soundtrack is a result of Kyd's departure or a decision to just let the wilderness breathe on its own. I just know there's a peaceful quality to AC3's more pastoral environments. Which reminds me that despite criticisms following early trailers that Assassin's Creed 3 would be pro-American, the game doesn't actually romanticize anything about the revolution, let alone pick a side. It does, however, romanticize the frontier, this virgin land Connor's tribe has sworn to protect. Assassin's Creed 3 used the frontier to completely revamp the flow of the franchise's parkour. Altair and Ezio spent most of their time in urban environments, clambering along rooftops and over dense crowds. In AC3, though, Connor darts through the forest canopy, stalking its prey among natural formations. Oddly enough, I'm reminded of the way Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater brought the series' stealth formula to a more open environment. It stressed cooperation with the wilderness and reliance on organic materials. Connor's adventure is less focused on survival than Naked Snake's was, but it was a drastic change regardless, and it opened up new avenues for future Assassin's Creed settings. Last year, in my video about the franchise's evolution, I used a quote from Jade Raymond, creator of the Assassin's Creed series, founder of EA Motive, and recently head of Google's new Stadia Games and Entertainment, to name a few of her many, many accolades. In an interview with The Guardian, though, she described the series in a way that sums it up really well, and I still haven't found a better quote since. She called Assassin's Creed a sandbox for creatives. Basically, it's this thing that creators can mold into their own vision, and after my recent playthrough, I'm convinced Assassin's Creed 3 is one of the key turning points in the ever-evolving series. It broadened the scope and brought the formula to new environments. It introduced the beloved naval combat and paved the way for Assassin's Creed Rogue's Templar protagonist. For better or worse, it took the kitchen sink approach with its open world activities, making Brotherhood, already bursting at the seams with things to do, look sparse by comparison. To use Raymond's words, it was a sandbox for creatives, and it helped set up another decade of sandboxes to come. So it's all the more astonishing to recall that before its global success, Assassin's Creed was originally planned as a trilogy. AC3 closed out Desmond's story, and it was supposed to bring finality to the End of the World arc, and for all intents and purposes, remained the last numbered entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise. As Raymond said in the same interview, even she didn't plan on more than 3 titles. But despite any initial intent for a singular trilogy, Ubisoft faced the difficult task of extending a narrative that was originally supposed to bring closure. Much like its protagonist, torn between the worlds of the Mohawk, the Assassins, and the warring colonists, Assassin's Creed 3 had to become a conduit for something bigger. Like Connor, AC3 had to find its place between conflicting ideas. But it also had to establish an identity of its own. It hasn't aged well in many respects, but its remaster has ignited my appreciation for what I previously deemed a mediocre title. And as far as remasters go, I'd call that a success.